Okay, if anybody happens to be watching me right now, this is what I call my pre-show, which is just I come on to make sure that all the technical everythings are working. And then at 10:50, the pre-show starts where I have casual, informal connections with whoever happens to be here early. And then the show starts officially at 11. So bear with me if I look away to be monitoring the technical kind of stuff. And if you are watching this, wherever you are, I'd love it if you would say hello. Give me your name and where you're from in the chat box or the comments. So I'm just going to check everything. It looks like we are good on YouTube. I'm waiting to see that we're going to come on live fine on Facebook. So let's see what happens with that. All right, so Facebook's looking good. So at this moment, it looks like we are in good shape. Let me double check on the website. Yeah. So again, if you happen to be here early, please say hello. Give me your name and where you're from, and say hello. And then I mean, you can communicate whatever you'd like to at this point. But I'll start the 10-minute countdown of the pre-show at 10:50. So Alan says hello from Houston, Texas. Hello, Alan. Welcome. I think it's welcome back. I think that you have participated before, Alan. Let me know if that's the case. Welcome or welcome back. As always, I'm thrilled to have anyone here who comes here, especially people who are returning because they're getting benefit from what they're seeing. So cool. Hi, I'm Dave from Detroit. Welcome, Dave from Detroit. I don't remember seeing anybody from Detroit, so maybe this is the first time you've been on live. I'm not sure. But welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Alan says yes several times. Cool. Hello, I am Leo from Germany. Hello, Leo. Welcome again. I don't remember seeing a Leo from Germany, so maybe this is your first time. Maybe it's not, but welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Let's see, where are we on time? Yeah, we're good. Again, if anybody that happens to be watching and you're not going to be shy on me, I invite you to say hello. Give me your name and where you're from and anything else you'd like to say or chat about casually, you know, not official teaching stuff. This is just casual, social kind of interaction. But I'm happy to chat with you all about that, anything that you want to bring up. Stella from Toronto. Welcome, Stella. Happy to have you. I recognize your name. I believe you've been on before, so welcome back. This is cool. Took me a while. If this is your first time watching or you haven't heard me say this before, it took me a while to get all the technical stuff in place and just the way that I want it to make it easy for me to do the show and give what I want to give to you in the way that I want to. But it's pretty much settled in now. This is going to be episode 8. Sometime I'll probably get another camera angle and show you what all of this looks like, how I actually do this in case you're curious. I think I also may kind of give you a little video walk-in tour of this is my office and my command center over my garage in my home in Virginia in the United States, and some people are curious. This is where I've written all of the books, at least the from Busting Loose on, and created a lot of the stuff that you've probably seen. Andrew, hello from Singapore. Hello, Andrew. Welcome back. Thrilled to have you. Alex is from South Africa. Wow, Alex, I think this is your first visit and the first person I'm aware of participating from South Africa, so that's way cool. Welcome. Alex, glad to be here. I'm thrilled to have you here too. That's wonderful. Dave from Johannesburg, South Africa. So we got 2 from South Africa. Cool. Welcome, Dave. I think you've been here before, Dave. Maura Rose from Dublin again. Delighted to be here. Sometimes I get sidetracked. It is nearly 4 p.m. here. I understand. Maura Rose, unfortunately, well, the great blessing of the internet is that we can connect with each other from all over the world like this, and the difficulty is time zones. There's no possible way to ever do a show like this, anything live, that's going to be a time zone that'll work for everybody or work for everybody all the time. So thank goodness there's replays and other ways to communicate. So you always seem to find your way here at Mora Rose, even if you get sidetracked. So that's great. Frank, hello from Basel, Switzerland. Thrilled to have you here, Frank. I'm not sure. I've seen Basel, Switzerland before, so maybe this is your first time. I'm not sure. Excuse me. Jessica from Southern Oregon. I attended the workshop in Sedona with my dear friend Marilyn Davidson. Jessica, I can't see from the little picture on Facebook, but the way my mind works, I'm very good with faces, but I'm not so great with names. So the odds are I would recognize your face from that event, even though it was a long time ago, but I don't recognize the name. I'm sorry. Pavel, might be one day, Robert, you'll invent teleport to mitigate time zone. Well, you know, in my mind, that's always been a fantasy. I don't know if any of you know. There's here's the countdown. There was a a movie that was called Jumper, that was about a guy who could teleport, and it was based on a series of books about people that spontaneously developed the ability to teleport. And wow, that would be cool. I doubt it's going to happen in my story in my lifetime, but it would be really cool if it did. Adriana from Alberta, Canada. Welcome back, Adriana. You've been a steady attendee. That's wonderful. I appreciate it. Dave Langley, yes, I have been here before. Okay, I guess I just didn't know that you were from South Africa. That's a part of the world I have not been to yet. There are many, actually, that I have not been to yet, but that I hope to get to. My father retired at a relatively young age, and he kind of had a goal to hit as many different countries as he possibly could in his retirement years before he passed on, and it's kind of impossible, really, to do that in today's world. But he got to a lot of different places, and there's a lot of places that I would love to be able to visit and share the teachings to as well. Another Adriana from the UK. Welcome. Thrilled to have you here. Again, I love the whole global nature of this. It really excites me. Okay. If you happen to just arrive and you haven't already, I'd love it if you would say hello and let me know your name and where you're from and anything else you might want to share or ask in a social, casual way. That's the purpose of this pre-show, just to connect socially and casually before the official show begins. I'm assuming everybody can see me and hear me fine because I've tested it and nobody has said anything. So that's always good news on a live stream. Always good news on a live stream. Okay. Don't see anybody new introducing themselves or saying or sharing anything. Franca, hopefully I pronounced that right. I do my best. From Switzerland. So we got two that I know of from Switzerland today. That's cool. Welcome, Franca, whatever it is. Where are we? Okay. So we got 8 minutes that we can connect socially. Hi, Penny from Overland Park, Kansas. Happy to be here for another Tuesday. Happy to have you back. Thrilled that you're all here. This is cool. And hey, Pavel, maybe I'll leave that task up to you. Maybe I'll let you invent some way to teach people how to teleport, and then you can teach me. And then I can teach other people as well as get the benefits myself. So I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll leave that up to you. Pavel, where are you from? Would you mind sharing? I'm curious. I think you've shared it before. Franca, that's right. Okay, cool. All right. Let me see here. I got a notification up here on Facebook. Okay, that's just one of the welcome comments. Liz is here. Hello, Liz. Where are you from? Always love to know if you're willing to share. Karen, hello from Germany, or Karine. I'm sorry, I don't know. Could be either to me. Welcome from Germany. So it looks like we got 2 or 3 people from Germany today. It actually appears that we have more global people this week, more people from outside the United States than from the United States, at least, that have introduced themselves. I think this is just another, yeah. Before doing this show and a couple of other things, I never really spent that much time on Facebook, so there's a lot of stuff about the way Facebook works that I'm just learning now. But slowly but surely I'm getting there. Liz is from California. Cool. Welcome. What city, Liz? Keep bugging you to give me more information. I have a lot of family in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area. I haven't been to California in a while. I'll be going in August to LA. It's funny that for the first time in my life, the vast majority of the traveling that I have been doing in the last few years has all been international, particularly to Asia and that part of the world, instead of the United States. And normally it kind of was the reverse, but that's the way things have unfolded in my story. Let's see. Olga from Russia and Dmitry from Ukraine. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Once again, that's a part of the world that I have not gotten to yet. I have been to China, your neighbor, so to speak, multiple times. Have not gotten to Russia yet, but I definitely would like to. And I have it on my list, maybe just to go there socially, but my preference is always to go somewhere, be able to share the teachings and the things that are my passion and my mission and purpose and life's work, and then also be able to explore instead of just going somewhere on a vacation. But whatever happens, happens. I just love combining it when I get the opportunity. Adriana, I am thoroughly enjoying BHT, which is short for Brutally Honest Tuesdays, if you ever see that. It is very supportive to my story. Cool. Thrilled to hear it. Diane is here from Southern Indiana. Welcome, Diane. Happy to have you here. Not sure if you've been on the show before, or if you have, if you participated and introduced yourself like that, but cool. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Woody is here from ALA. Is that Alabama, Woody? USA? Welcome back, Woody. Woody's been a regular participant, as a bunch of you others have been. Again, in case you don't know, upcoming is episode 8. So it's hard to believe I've been doing this for 2 months. It seems like I just started yesterday. Liz is here from Florida. Welcome, Liz, or welcome back if this is a return visit to the show. Julie's here from California. Hello again, Julie. Looking forward to seeing you again in September, Julie, when you come to the event here at the house. Been a while since we have seen each other. It's going to be really cool doing that again. Some of you may know, you may not, that when I offer what I call the Ultimate Freedom Experience, for years, when I did live events, it was in a hotel and it was in a ballroom or it was in a small room. And then about 3.5 years ago or something, all of a sudden I got the idea to do an experiment of offering live events here in my house for a very small group of people. And it was an experiment, but I loved it and the people loved it. And so I don't do events anymore in hotels or in public places unless somebody invites me. When I do events, I've kind of had a default of doing them here at the house for a small group, which has been really cool. Let's see. Anybody new? Woody, yes, Alabama. Cool. All right. So we're on the 2-minute countdown. Anybody else wants to say hello? Tell me your name, where you're from, share anything socially before the show officially begins, when you'll see that the countdown timer hits 0. I'd love to hear from you. If not, that's fine. Hi from the Ukraine from Lily. Hello, Lily, and welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Chum from San Diego, California. Welcome. I don't recognize that name from before, so maybe this is your first visit to the show. If so, that's cool. Again, forgive me looking away from the camera. Sometimes I have to do that in order to be able to see what's going on, all the places that the show is streaming from. Lisa is here from New Jersey. Welcome back, Lisa. I recognize your name from previous weeks. Cool. So 1 minute to the beginning of episode 8. Cool. So I will take one last look here and then get ready to... Jonas from Germany. Got 3 people today from Germany. Welcome, Jonas. I don't recognize your name, so if this is your first time participating, thrilled to have you here. Welcome. Lots of fun to be had from this episode and the other ones that preceded it. If you haven't watched that, I'll address that in a minute. Let me just take one last quick look. Rob is here from Dallas. Welcome, Rob. All right, so we're at about 18 seconds, so I'm going to get ready here to start the show officially. And I'll see you soon. 10, 9, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Freedom Teachings video series. Welcome to the Brutally Honest Tuesdays show, a place that you can come every week to say goodbye to hype, dead ends, and frustration, and hello to the truth that sets you free. I'm Robert Scheinfeld, and I will be your host. In case you don't know, I'm a New York Times best-selling author, a speaker, a coach, an entrepreneur, and a major renegade, thus the title of this show. I'm also the creator of the Ultimate Freedom Experience, my life's work. The purpose of this show every week is to drop major drops in the pond of your life, your consciousness, your awareness that can ripple out and affect you long after each episode ends. And the purpose is also to push hard and aggressively on lies, illusions, and stories so that you can discover and experience the truth with capital T's that's out there waiting for you. Welcome to Brutally Honest Tuesdays. In case you don't know, but it's been all over the place, so you probably know. This is episode 8. Hard to believe that I've actually been doing this for 8 weeks. It's been a real blast for me. And I hope for you, for however many episodes you have participated in, and if this is your first one, it's my strong recommendation that you go back. This is the final show in a sequence of 7 shows that were designed to plant certain seeds, build a certain foundation, communicate in a totality a very, very important message that's at the core of what I offer. So if you have not gone through the previous 7 episodes or 6 episodes, the first one was just an intro. Then I strongly suggest and invite that you do it. The theme for today is, and again, this is the final episode in a sequence. So the title of this episode, the theme, the topic of this episode is, if what you've been saying, Robert, is true, then how the hell am I supposed to live my life? And so we'll get to that in a minute. First, just a couple of logistical things. First, if you haven't been on the show before, the basic flow is that I share, teach, whatever you want to call it, for somewhere around 30 minutes. And then we transition into questions and answers. And I do questions and answers for somewhere around 30 minutes also. The goal is that the show lasts for about an hour, give or take a few minutes. I do my best to answer the most important questions in the Q&A section. I can't always get to everything, but I am copying down the ones that I don't get to, and we'll address them in some way, shape, or form sometime down the line. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure that out. So a couple of logistical things. If you get interrupted, you cannot finish the show, or something happens, here is where to go to get access to replays on that same page. And again, it's robertscheinfeld.com, BHT, which is short for Brutally Honest Tuesdays, to make it easy to remember. You can also subscribe to my email list that's just for this show and announcements and things related to this show. And I strongly invite you to do that, because Facebook does not always share everything that goes to Facebook pages. And so if I put something here in the group, there's no guarantee that you're going to see it. And so there's certain times that there's important messages that I have for you. And so I strongly encourage you to go to that page, subscribe to the email list. It's only about this show. You're not going to get blitzed with all kinds of messages about all kinds of other topics. It's very focused on just this show. If you have not already gotten a copy of this guide that I call Living the Unblocked Life, I strongly suggest that you go to my website. You can see the link on the page here. Get a copy of this. It will start you down a road that this show is also supporting. And then once you read that guide, you'll have the opportunity, if you want to go more deeply into a free video masterclass, multi-part, where I'll go in much more depth on a lot of the stuff that I talk about here. So if you haven't already gotten a copy of the guide, I invite you to get a copy of the guide. And I ask that if you enjoy the show, you get benefit from it, that you like, share, or comment on it in order to support me in that way and this show in that way, and also to give other people a gift. So those are the brief introductory comments. So if what you're saying is true, Robert, how am I supposed to live my life? Now, I figured that I would be able to get everything out on this topic in this episode, but I don't plan and script all of this, and I never quite know what I'm going to say when I pick a topic. So it may bleed over till next week, it may not, but my intention was to get everything out that I want to get out this week on this particular topic. So I want to begin the topic by showing you a short video clip, and it'll speak for itself with just a couple of introductory comments. It's a scene from a movie called City of Angels. And on the left side of your screen, you'll see a blonde woman. You'll probably recognize the actress, and Meg Ryan. And she is a heart surgeon. She's a doctor and has had a very successful track record being able to repair the hearts of her patients that come to have heart surgery, but hasn't experienced a series of experiences where she should have been able to help people that she was operating on, but they died. And it kind of led to a crisis. And so let me just show this clip for you, and then I'll come on back and we'll continue this topic. So here we go.
So, what are you hiding from?
My patient's wife. She wants me to tell her that her husband is going to be okay, that I have every confidence, and I don't. After all this time and after all this work, I suddenly have this feeling that none of this is in my hands, nothing. And if it isn't, what do I do with that?
Now, what was pointed to in that video, and by the way, if you've had an experience kind of like that, however you've had it, including working with me on this show or some other way, please put a Y in the chat box if you can personally identify with what you just saw Meg Ryan kind of narrate there and what I'm going to be talking about on this show. Now, that was a crisis for her within the context of the movie, and I had the same exact crisis. Now, you may know this part of the story of my life, you may not, but I ran into that same exact wall that she just talked about. You know, I grew up and I thought that, you know, not egotistically, it's just what I observed. I thought that I was a pretty smart guy, and I, over time, developed a lot of skills and learned a lot of techniques. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go out there when I first, you know, left college and went off on my own, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to build a really great, successful life, you know. And then I kept bumping into dead end after dead end after dead end. And these same patterns kind of repeated in my life. And I could talk to you for hours about this, but I'll just abbreviate the highlights. The biggest, one of the most repetitive patterns was what I call up, 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 crash and burn. And that would happen to me with my career, and that would happen to me with finances. I'd get more successful, more successful, more successful, more successful. Then when it looked like I was really going to soar, everything would fall apart through some series of weird things that didn't make any sense to me at the time. And that kept looping over and over and over and over. And every time a cycle ran, the numbers got bigger. And so what was at stake and what could be lost got bigger. And then in my personal relationships, as it related to romantic relationships with women, I could never make it work. And ultimately, I was either alone all the time or I was in relationships that maybe they started okay, maybe they didn't, but they ultimately became nightmares and then I would end them. As it turned out, I was the one that usually said, I can't do this anymore, I'm leaving. And that kept looping with romantic relationships. And then with relationships in general, whether it was personal or it was business, there was a pattern that looped of me continually not being treated with a lot of respect, with a lot of appreciation for what I was contributing, gratitude for the things that I was doing, and I was always in one way, shape, or form being treated as if I was some kind of a problem and was doing something wrong. And no matter what I did, somehow I just always ended up getting slapped. And it was like, I just can't seem to win no matter what I do in a lot of my kinds of relationships. Now, that's a quick summary of it. But these patterns kept looping. And no matter what I did, what I learned, what technique I tried, including my own techniques that I ultimately developed and that my first 2 books were about, I couldn't seem to break these patterns. And every time I thought that I was going to break them, I was getting, oh God, I think I finally, had my breakthrough. Then one or more of them would loop again, and then ultimately they'd all loop again, and I'd have to go, hasn't worked yet, haven't gotten to whatever it is. And then this just kept happening for years and years and years and years and years. And then it looked like one of these crash and burn cycles was going to happen with really big numbers after the biggest financial success that I had ever had. Blue Ocean Software, some of you may know that story. And I had a wife and I had 2 kids and everybody was thriving in a particular lifestyle. I have a very high threshold for pain. And so I might have been able to survive another crash, but at that point in my life, I just could not deal with crashing again and the pain for me and then see my wife and kids suffer. And I absolutely hit the lowest low point. And you can't see it, but over here, this is my office over the garage in my home in Virginia. I went outside in the backyard one night and it was dark. I think the moon was about half full, so there was some brightness out there, but it was at night. And I literally went out in the backyard at the end of my rope at the lowest low point that I've ever been at, on steroids of what Meg Ryan was talking about. And I looked up as if talking to whatever you want to call it, God, creator, source. In my work, I've called it different things. I call it true creative essence now. You have your own word or words, you know what I'm talking about. But I looked up and I said, I can't do this anymore. And some of you know this first part of the story of what I'm about to say. I said, and I literally said it this way, swearing. You teased the shit out of me when I was a kid with that conversation with my grandfather. And I have invested decades and blood, sweat, tears, time, money, energy, trying to get to the secret, trying to get to the truth, trying to change, fix, and improve my life, and be able to tap this power and wisdom my grandfather teased me with when I was 12. And obviously, I'm missing something. And obviously, so are all the other people out there that are writing the books and doing the workshops and the lectures, because it wasn't just me that this was happening to. I was seeing this happen to people all over the world. And so I literally said, obviously I'm missing something, and you either need to give it to me. I was in my, I think, mid to late 40s when this happened. I'm 61 right now. And I said, you either need to give me what I'm missing, which is a variation of how am I supposed to live, because what I realized through all of this is what Meg Ryan was pushing on there, but it was like a blurry lens through a camera. I kind of saw it, but I kind of didn't, that obviously I wasn't in control and something else was driving what was happening to me, which I've talked about in the previous episode. So I said, look, you either need to give me what I'm missing, or you need to get me the hell out of here, meaning kill me, because I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't have any strength left. I don't have any enthusiasm left. I don't have any motivation left. And that was the first of 2 times that I went outside, and it was different the second time. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But about 7, 8 months later, what I wrote about in this book came through. And as you know, if you're aware of this book or you discovered what's in this book through some other training or something that I've done, there's 4 techniques in it. There's 4 tools in it. And I embraced those tools. And so what do I do in my life? How do I live? When obviously I'm not in charge and there's all this stuff going on that I talked about previous episodes, I'm not going to talk about again here. If you haven't seen those episodes, please go watch them. So the what to do in daily life was the 4 tools that were in here. And that's what I did. And I kind of let go of, I want to fix my relationships. I want to get the money faucet flowing smoothly. I want to break those patterns. It was just using the tools and hoping that it would finally lead me somewhere, you know? So how do I live my life every day? Got real simple. Use the tools that are in here when stuff happens in your life every day. Now, the mind really wants that, and I'm sure that you can identify with this. The mind really likes to have rules and formulas and techniques. If you know what I mean, please put a Y in the chat box. The mind, what I call the mind machine, wants to have rules, formulas, and techniques. Whenever I get angry, here's what I do. Whenever I need money, here's what I do. If I notice a pattern that's repeating, here's what I do to try to break it. Give me the rules, give me the formulas, give me the techniques, tell me what to do in order to get what I want. Again, put a Y in the chat box if your comments, if you are aware of the fact that you really like this, that you really want this. It seems to be rampant, particularly people that go down the personal spiritual development path. And then ultimately, I discovered that techniques can only take you so far. What was in here created literal miracles in my life, but it still did not address the question that this episode is all about, which is how do you live your life given the fact that I got thoughts and feelings that I experience inside of me, and I'm not creating them, I'm not choosing them, I'm not putting them there. I just have to deal with them when they show up on their own. I call that inner space if you don't know. And then stuff's happening all day long in what I call story space. People, places, things, business, finances, relationships, body, and stuff's happening with a life of its own that I have no control over in both inner space and story space. And so how am I supposed to live? And I embraced what was in the book. Many things changed. As I've talked about in my languages, I knocked out a lot of cloud cover. That was what was in the way of me experiencing the sun of truth and the life that I really wanted to live. But then ultimately things stalled for me again. And what Meg talked about, okay, what am I supposed to do with this now? Because one day I naturally stopped using the tools that were in this after many benefits had been received and things had been changed. And the question came back. And I could go on for hours about other aspects of the story and what happened to me, and I do in the Ultimate Freedom Experience, and I do in the training that if you get the free guide I mentioned earlier, we'll go into more of this. But I ended up going out in the backyard again. And I wasn't desperate at that point. I wasn't at the lowest of the low anymore. But what I had realized is the answer to that question was the most important thing to me. It became the most important, highest priority. Knowing truth with a capital T, experiencing truth with a capital T, knowing how to live my life every day while fully embracing truth with a capital T. And so I went out in the backyard again. Again, it was at night. And again, I looked up as if talking to, then I called it consciousness or expanded self. The current label, True Creative Essence, came later with the Ultimate Freedom stuff. And this time I said, and by the way, it is not a magic formula guaranteed to succeed if you go outside and you look up and you get mad at God or whomever else, you know, consciousness, whatever else, or you demand something or you ask for something. If you've tried asking for, that, whatever, for help in your life and you didn't get the help, put a Y in the chat box. Odds are most of you, if not all of you, have had that experience. So I went out again and I said, I realized that the most important thing to me, the thing that matters to me most right now, is to be able to experience more of the truth with a capital T, and to understand again how to be able to live my life. I'll just call it words don't serve, in total alignment with truth, no matter what's going on. And so I literally said, I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to give up. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care how hard I have to work or suffer or struggle or sacrifice, whatever. Please take me deeper into truth, because that's all that really matters to me. And the truth is, that was, money, stuff, and things just didn't matter to me anymore. At that point, I had achieved a pretty high level of success. I had enjoyed a lot of the trappings of financial success, and they weren't floating my boat. But that also actually meant at the time it included my marriage. It included being a father. It included everything. I realized that whatever, the most important thing to me was truth with a capital T. And that was all that mattered. And so I said, please take me deeper. And then a very interesting thing happened, because this did not come to me in the way that I'm going to describe. But what I call an inner teacher showed up. And you may know this story, you may not. I talk more about it again in the free video masterclass that the guide will lead you to that I mentioned before. This inner teacher, as I call it now, showed up. And to me, it was just this voice. There was no face, there was no name. I recognized the voice, I recognized the presence, but this inner teacher, this inner guide, whatever you want to call it, showed up and basically said to me, you started a journey with your grandfather, Robert, when you were 12, and I have come here to finish the job. I've come here to take you deeper, not in response to your request, but it's time. And then I began a journey. And this is the image that I use to refer to that journey. You've probably seen it. So on the far left, you can see that there's a character, but it's dark. And that's what I call phase one. That's what I call living a blocked life, where we're frustrated, struggling, not getting what we're wanting, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? And then there's a portal that can open. And techniques, for me, the techniques from the Busting Loose book and those teachings, that's what opened that portal. And it's a portal literally into another world and another way of living. And there's the opportunity on the journey that I took and that you can take, some of you are already on it, to go through that magical portal. And it literally is a magical portal in a way. And then the journey continues. But the journey continues, as I mentioned, without techniques and without methods and without practices and without you driving the bus. It's a journey that who you really are takes you on. And then metaphorically, you can see that the background gets more and more bright, less and less cloud cover, more and more sun, and then the character you can see is glowing on the far right. And that's the journey that this inner teacher took me on. I didn't do it. I didn't technique my way there. I wanted it, but I wasn't driving the bus. I didn't make it happen. And I was taken on this journey, and what happened on the journey, and to my bias, this is what must happen before you can experience truth with a capital T, really get the answer to the question, how do I live my life if I embrace the truth, subset of which, if I embrace what you've said in these previous episodes, Robert, or other things that I've learned from you, how do I live my life? The answer to that question comes from not because you get some magical technique, not because you get some, way cool new knowledge, but because something, I'm just going to call it words don't serve, deep inside of you shifts. There's a deep shift that happens, and it's deep, profound, and permanent. And I didn't create the shift. I didn't know how. I tried. Now, if you're aware of the Busting Loose teachings, the other things, and the process and the tools, and you're aware of the metaphor of knocking out cloud cover, you could say that this shift that takes place is the knocking out of huge amounts of cloud cover and allowing the sun to shine in, but it's a shift. And I have to tell you that what I discovered for my own self on my own journey, and what I've seen echoed and mirrored on the journeys that I've guided other people all over the world taking, is that I could not make that shift myself. Don't have the ability, don't have the power, don't have access to what needs to be shifted to create the shift. You can't do it yourself. There isn't any technique that's going to make it happen for you. A technique can take you so far, and then this other part of you, whatever, not part of you, but who you really are, again, what I now call true creative essence, has to take over and start to make these shifts. And there's a series of shifts that need to take place deep inside of you. And then once that shift takes place, the question gets answered. How am I supposed to live my life? But it doesn't get answered with ideas and concepts. It doesn't get answered with information. It doesn't get answered with techniques. Okay, from now on, whenever this happens, do that. Whenever that happens, do this. That's not how the question gets answered. The question gets answered with you waking up in the morning, and because things have changed at such a deep, profound, and permanent way, you just act differently. You make decisions differently. Different things appear in inner space in my language, thoughts, feelings, sensations. Different things appear in story space, people, places, things, body, and it just happens because who you really are takes you on this journey. Again, it's not about techniques. It's not about ideas and concepts. It's not about you doing something specifically to try to make something happen, change, fix, and improve yourself, expand, whatever you want to call it. This is driven by who you really are, and you get to experience it. And then when the shift takes place, it ripples out. Again, I'll show you this image. That shift creates drops in the pond of your life, your being, who you really are, that ripple out and change absolutely everything that's happening to you inside and outside. Again, what I call inner space and story space, and it's because of this journey. The journey makes it possible. And again, my bias, you may like this, you may not like this, you may agree with this, you may not agree with this. It's not a journey that you can take, that you can do yourself. It's not about techniques. It's not about a to-do list. It's something that who you really are sets into motion and then triggers certain things and makes things and ultimately creates this shift which you then experience. But it isn't something that you can do, but it's something that happens as a natural byproduct of taking this journey. And this inner teacher, this voice, became my constant companion on this journey, talking to me, showing me things, changing things, letting me experience more and more and more truth, showing me why I was the way I was, why these patterns looped, all these kinds of things. But it's a journey. It's not about techniques. It's not about ideas and concepts. You can take the journey, you can have the experience, but you cannot do it yourself. It has to come from this other part of you when, as I talked about before, it's the right time and it's the right way for it to happen in your unique story to fulfill your unique mission and purpose. And so ultimately, there's 4 steps that are part of this particular journey. There are 4 steps that I ended up taking. I did not do it. Again, I really want to make that clear. And to me, there's a lot of people that don't like this. They want to feel like they're in control, they're in charge, they're driving the bus, they can do it, all this kind of stuff. And I was like that until I discovered that's not what's really going on. And there's a lot more about that in the previous 6 episodes, if you don't really know what I'm talking about there. So there's 4 steps. So let's go through those 4 steps quickly. Okay, so here are the 4 steps to freedom, to living the unblocked life, to finally ending the unwinnable wars you've been fighting every day with one or more of the following: your thoughts, your feelings, your body, other people, your finances, and the world around you. Step number 1, you must admit, acknowledge, and be brutally honest about what's really going on in your life. I shared a lot about what's really going on in episodes 2 through 7 of the show. You can verify the accuracy of what I shared. It is not ideas, it is not concepts, it is not theories, it is not philosophy. You can verify the accuracy of what I shared from your own experience if you look with clear vision. Because here's the deal, the brutally honest truth. As long as you think that you are or you can create your reality, as long as you think you will finally find some sort of magical technique that you can use to manifest, attract, or create anything that you want, like the party line screams, as long as you think that you can find a way to tame the wild beast called life, you are doomed to a life of endless struggle and suffering. Step number 2, you must determine your level of commitment to unblocking yourself, experiencing truth with a capital T, and ultimate freedom. Is your level of commitment low, moderate, or high? If your commitment level is not already high, it needs to become high. Step number 3, move unblocking your life, experiencing truth with a capital T, and ultimate freedom to the top of your priority list. If you aren't absolutely committed and you don't have it as a top priority, sorry, love, ain't gonna happen. It's okay if it doesn't happen. Despite the extraordinary rewards, this journey that I've been talking to you about isn't for everyone. It isn't everyone's mission and purpose to get to the final destination that I've been talking about. I'm just being brutally honest about what it takes to get there and to finally experience the big breakthroughs. Step number 4, find a guide. The journey that I have been talking about is a radically different path to travel. It's unlike anything that you've ever experienced before. There are lots of challenges on the path. There are lots of obstacles that you will encounter along the way. There are so many twists and turns and apparent ups and downs and confusing decision points. There are so many potential quicksand pits that you can get stuck in. You need to have a been there, done that guide who can light the way, show you the way, and be there for you when you have challenges, when you're experiencing obstacles, when you're confused or you don't know what to do. Now, as it relates to finding a guide, now those are the 4 steps of what it actually takes for this deep, profound, permanent shift to take place that ripples out and changes everything without you doing it, without you needing to do it, without techniques, methods, practices, repetitive things that you do every day, having to get clear and trying to attract, manifest, create these kinds of things. Those are the 4 steps. Now, on my journey, and by the way, this isn't better, it isn't higher, it isn't more evolved or special. It doesn't make any difference. We're all unique. In my case, I needed a guide, just like everybody to my bias that takes this path, takes this journey, needs to have a guide. In my case, it was an inner guide. It was this guide that appeared in inner space and guided me for multiple years. Sometimes, in my face every single day. Sometimes there would be quiet, but it was an inner teacher. It was an inner guide that guided me on this journey. And that could happen for you. It may already have to one degree or another, or you may have what you would call a guide or a teacher or a something inside of you that hasn't been guiding you on that particular journey, on this particular journey, but it's been helping you in other ways. But so that can happen for you. An inner guide can appear. The third opportunity is you find an external guide. And that's the role that I play with a lot of people. And the best way that I know how to do that and to help you take this same journey that I did is through what I call the Ultimate Freedom Experience. And the design of the Ultimate Freedom Experience, and what happens a lot, is that it starts out with me playing the role of an external guide for you, for the people that participate. And then in the design, at some point, the inner guide appears and continues down the road with you, because I can't be with you 24/7 like this inner guide was with me. So I start the ball rolling. I create certain things as it appears. I set certain things into motion. I make certain things possible, open certain doors. And then the inner guide that all of us ultimately have access to, who we really are, continues and carries you the rest of the way as I was carried the rest of the way. So it could be that an inner guide appears for you. It could be that an external guide appears for you and I can play that role for you. Or it could be that an external guide appears for you that has nothing to do with me, that is somebody else. And it could be somebody you know now, somebody you'll meet in the future, whatever. But these are the 4 steps of what it takes in your own unique, customized kind of a way. But those are the 4 things that happened to me, the 4 things that happen to the people that come into my sphere of influence and that I play the role of guide with. Those are the 4 things that need to happen. And you can see how all 4 of those things happened in the quick story that I just narrated with you. And so if that's something that interests you and you don't already know about the Ultimate Freedom Experience, you'll find out more about it if you start out with that guide and then go through the training. There's certain pieces of it I've shared with in this show, and I will in the future. But that deep, profound, and permanent shift, taking that journey, can't happen through a few episodes of a show like this. It's something else that has to happen, whether it comes from me, I play the role of guide for you, or somebody else does. So it is now time to go into the Q&A section. If you don't know, if you want to type in a question or a comment, if it's a question, put a Q with a colon before it. So because I have to look through all the stuff that's in different chat boxes and comments, and I scan looking for Qs. So if you have a question about what I've talked about today, or the relevance of it to previous episodes, if you don't know, I don't answer questions about the books or other things in this Q&A section. It's just about what I've talked about here in the show. So go ahead, if you haven't already, type in a Q with a colon and then your question. And then I went over a little bit, so I'll spend a little bit more time if we need to get through the questions. So go ahead and do that, type that in, and we will go into the Q&A section. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. See, comment. Adriana says, my mind is trapped in trying to figure out how to relinquish control and surrender to TCE. You see, this is the challenge. And this is something that I'm just going to use the language that the mind hates and really struggles with. And that I had struggled with. But, you know, when I narrated my story about how I discovered so many of these things, I can't do it, I'm not in charge, all these things I talked about in the previous episodes. This was not like some easy walk in the park thing for me. I didn't like just wake up one morning and go, oh, okay, I get what the truth is. I was pulled kicking and screaming with all of this bullshit in inner space and stressful thoughts and how do I this and how do I that? And I really want to, you know, but here's the reality. And again, mine doesn't like this. You, Adriana, cannot surrender. Surrendering can happen. What is called surrendering can happen, but you can't do it. I can't do it. Nobody watching this can, and this will probably bother a lot of people that are watching it. It can happen, but you can't do it. Now, let me give you a metaphor. I've talked about this in the previous episodes. Let me give you a metaphor. Suppose that you're watching a movie, The same thing's true of reading a novel or watching a TV show or a video game or something, but I'm just going to use the example of a movie. And you see that there's a character that's really struggling with something in this movie. And what appears inside of you is, and let's imagine that in this movie, the character is really struggling with how can I surrender? What did you say here? It scrolled up. Yeah, how to relinquish control and surrender. So you're watching this movie, and a character in the movie is struggling with how can I surrender and relinquish control? You're watching the movie, right? You can't help them, can you? No. Why? Because you have no access to the movie. You have no access to that character. You have no access to what's really creating what happens in that story. All you can do is be aware of what unfolds in this story that you're not the author of. And it's the same thing with us. And this really goes against the grain of 99.9% of what's taught out there. And again, it really pisses off a lot of people, a lot of mind machines, as I call it, because that struggle, Adriana, and everyone else that has it, is never going to end. You are never going to find a way for you, Adriana. I never found a way for me, Robert, to be able to here, take control. I surrender. You know, I mean, I could say those words. I could beg and pray or whatever else and say, please, you know, let me surrender, you know, let me give up, but there's no way for us to do it. There's all these things, as I said and I talked about in the previous episodes, that are happening in inner space in your life and happening in story space in your life, and you can't access any of that. You can't change any of that, despite what the party line is. But it can all change. But the question is, how can it change and who can change it? Well, who you really are can change it. If you're watching a movie and this character is really struggling with how to surrender, how to relinquish control, if you keep watching the movie, you could see that this character, somehow that happened. You can't do it, but you could see how it happened to the character in the story. The writers who do have access to what happens in that story can make it happen. Who you really are can make it happen. And this is one of the things that comes along with this shift, and it's very difficult for the mind to deal with. A lot of resistance in so many people and so many mind machines to this thing. But to me, this is what I discovered as being the absolute truth with a capital T that you can verify for yourself. And sometimes it takes a long time and some pretty crazy experiences to shake loose and shatter the beliefs that I'm in charge, I got the power, I can create my reality, I can this, I can that. But where I ultimately was led, what I ultimately experienced was, no, it can all happen, but I, Robert, can't do any of it. So if you're watching a movie, you're reading a novel, you're watching TV shows, in a sense, you're watching, you're experiencing what happens, and you're waiting to see what happens. And that's the truth of what happens in our lives day to day, no matter what the mind thinks about it or how the mind would rather have it be, or what the party line is of other teachings out there about that you can get whatever you want and you're creating your reality and all this kind of stuff. But this inner teacher did not come to me one day and say, hey, Robert, you can't relinquish control. You can't surrender. You just can't do it. And then I went, oh, okay, well, then I'll just stop trying. You know, that's not what happened. What happened to me is, and it's hard to put this into words, especially briefly here, is I tried to this, I tried to that, including surrendering and relinquishing control and experiencing truth and all that stuff. Tried this, didn't work. Tried that, didn't work. Tried this, didn't work. Tried that, didn't work. On and on and on until I was absolutely exhausted and fried. And I got to the point where it was, I got nothing. I had absolutely nothing else that I could try. In my language, no to do appeared in inner space. I was out of options. The way I used to language it is, Robert had tried all of his tricks and he had tried all the techniques and everything that he could think of. It all failed. This is what I meant when I said carried kicking and screaming to the experience of truth like this. You know, it wasn't this la-di-da easy walk in the park. But there was just nothing. And that wasn't just in a moment, that lasted. I woke up in the morning and there was nothing appeared for me to do. And then what happened is surrender. What happened is what you're calling relinquishing control. And then something really fascinating happened that I didn't see coming and I didn't expect, and it blew me away. That doesn't do it justice, but those are the best words I can think of, is that hard to put this into words, don't take it too literally. When I stopped trying to make things happen, when I stopped trying to technique my way places, when I stopped trying to create specific things, produce specific outcomes, all these other kinds of things, break these patterns. I could go on for hours about this. And the surrendering had happened. This shift had taken place. Then, and watched is not the right word because it's deeper than that, I watched as all these things miraculously changed and transformed. And I didn't do it. I wasn't doing it. It happened. And this journey continued, and this amazing stuff happened. But the bottom line truth is, and I suppose it's possible, but my bias is the mind is never going to accept this until it happens, is that all day long in our lives, things happen inside of us that I call inner space. Things happen outside of us that I call story space. And it just happens, and we're aware of it. The mind makes up stories that we're doing it, we're choosing it, we're creating it, we're making it happen, and that just isn't true. So part of this shift is getting into alignment, so to speak. Words don't serve. By the way, I've said this before, I'll say it again. The more deeply you go into truth with a capital T, the more words fail to accurately describe things, and there's collisions and inconsistencies and things that can appear to disagree with each other or whatever. So, but this isn't just about surrendering. It isn't just about relinquishing control. It isn't about whatever you all may be focusing on beyond Adriana doing this question. It's the same thing. All of these things can happen, but what I discovered is you can't do it. All of these amazing things can happen. I couldn't do it. And again, the ironic, surprising, shocking thing that it blew me away is when it appeared, and this isn't accurate language, that Robert backed off. And again, I didn't choose it. I didn't make it happen. It happened in the way that I just narrated it. All of a sudden, all these amazing things started to happen on their own. And some of them were the things that had always been on my list that I really wanted, the patterns to break, to stop feeling so tortured, to stop feeling so angry all the time and frustrated and hurt and rejected and victimized all the time. All this stuff that was driving me nuts. A lot of the things that if a magic genie had showed up, I would have asked her, that I had begged consciousness to do for me, happened. And then all kinds of other things that I never thought of, that I never asked for, was never on any list. Amazing things started to happen after this shift took place. And I can't, it would take me hours to explain what this shift is. And it doesn't matter about understanding it or being able to narrate it or explain it. When it happens, and it changes everything. So, long-winded answer to your question there. Let me see. All right. Let me see here. So this is the part that needs to happen after you make it through what you do from busting loose from the money game, is the question. Well, there isn't anything that has to happen. There is no such thing as a must. There are trends and tendencies. Now, I said these 4 steps need to get taken, and again, there can be plenty of exceptions, but that's what happened with me and what I've seen happen with the vast majority of people that I have become their guide, is that the 4 things that I talked about happened. Made a commitment, were brutally honest about what was really going on, made it a priority. It isn't casually, I'd kind of like to experience the truth. It would be kind of nice or cool. It generally became, I gotta have this, like I did, and those kinds of, that's the vast majority of the trend. So, it isn't what has to happen, but it's what happens a lot. And for me, again, embracing and using what was in the book was the closest thing to magic that I'd ever experienced. It knocked out huge amounts of cloud cover, changed huge things, but not everything. And what changed everything, and again, I used what was here aggressively for 6.5 years, if you don't know. And then this other step of the journey led by this inner teacher happened, and that went on for about, 2.5, 3 years, and still continues from time to time. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's what I've seen. And then I've seen two things. There's a lot of people who are aware of this and other things from this that I shared. And then they found out about what I've shared here and about the ultimate freedom experience. And just like me, they started with this. It took them wherever it took them. And then the ultimate freedom experience finished it off, is finishing it off now. Again, it's a journey. It doesn't happen like that, like it did for me. And then there are other people, don't know anything about this, don't know anything about the tools, don't know anything about those teachings, that came right to the ultimate freedom experience and were taken to the final destination that I call phase 3, ultimate freedom awake, unblocked life, different words, same thing. You don't even have to do this, but for some people, like me, it's the best way, it's the perfect way, it's the only way that's really going to work. So it's a possibility, it's an option that what I call the ultimate freedom experience, with me acting as your guide on this journey, it's possible that that'll be how it happens for you, or could happen for you, and it could look completely different. But when I'm involved, that's how it tends to look. It started with this, and then gets finished off over time with the ultimate freedom experience, same thing that happened with me. Or there are people who can go right into the ultimate freedom experience, knock out huge amounts of cloud cover that way, and be taken to this deep, profound, and permanent shift that way without the prerequisite of what's in Busting Loose from the Money Game. Clark says, I know what you're saying is true with a capital T because I have experienced the same thing, but not as long. And that's another issue, you know. I really make it known to people how long it took for me, and in the greater scheme of things, to me, it's nothing. But my journey from going from what I call phase 1 into phase 2 and then into phase 3 with Ultimate Freedom Awake, this permanent shift taking place, this journey taking place, all told, that was about 10, 11 years. And it continues to ripple out in different ways now. And there's no rule or formula, but in the vast majority of cases, when I'm acting as a guide, starting out this way, starting out with ultimate freedom, starting out this way, continuing with ultimate freedom, people tend to reach the destination, get the benefits, whatever language that you want to use, faster than it was for me. In many ways, I was the slowpoke, you know, and there's some cases where that's not the case, where somebody has taken longer than me. Doesn't matter. I talked about this in a previous episode, that on this particular journey, I'm going to show you again, no matter how it may feel when you're in the middle of it, when you come out the other end and you're that glowy character on the far right, and you look back, it's just, wow, that was an amazing ride. That was an amazing journey, and look where I am. And I've never seen it, doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but I've never seen somebody look back and say, okay, well, that 7-year, 3-year, 2-year, whatever journey that I just took was pretty amazing, and I really could have lived without this and this and this and this, and that didn't need to be 6 months, TC, consciousness, true creative essence. That really could have been a week, you know, and judging, it's just looking back and going, wow, no matter how long it took, no matter how difficult it was. Alex says, how can one differentiate between the mind machine and the voice or the inner teacher? Again, I can't give you a technique. This is the thing I'm really hammering on here. The biggest breakthroughs, the biggest experiences of truth with a capital T do not come because you do something, because you learn a new skill, because I or somebody else tells you, oh, okay, you want this? To get this, do this and this and this and this and this. being aware of what's the mind machine and what's something else, the kind of stuff that your question is pointing to, happens when this shift takes place. In my language, when you knock out enough cloud cover, but you can't make it happen. You can't speed it up. You can't shortcut it. There isn't some technique that you can use to make it happen, but it happens naturally, like everything else I've talked to, as a natural byproduct of this shift taking place, that who you really are, what I now call true creative essence, makes all of it happen. Again, I'll give you another metaphor. Imagine that you're reading a novel. Could be a movie or a TV show, but imagine you're reading a novel. And you're on page 263. And you read that a character says what you said. Okay, I understand there's the mind machine and there's mind noise and then there's truth. And you hear this character say, I really want to know how to tell the difference. And the last word on the bottom of page 263, you read this character say, I really want to know how to tell the difference. So you're reading this book, right? What are you going to do? You're going to turn the page, right? And you're going to keep reading. And you're going to see what happens. And you're going to find out, does this character learn how to differentiate it? And how does it happen? And all this other kind of stuff. You're not making it happen. It's happening. The author of the story, who we really are, is making it happen. So all these things again, and again, even though the mind argues with this a lot and disagrees with this and doesn't like it, and there can be lots of noise about you can't do it, but it can happen, that simple message, it's awesome news. Because let me tell you a couple of things, and I know that you can identify with this. If you can, please, please, please put a Y in the chat box so I can see what's going on with the people listening here. Trying to do it all yourself. Trying to figure out the best way to get it done yourself is exhausting, it's frustrating, it's overwhelming, and like I said in that slide with Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean, it ain't never going to happen. You're never going to figure it all out. You're never going to make everything happen that you want. When this shift takes place, and there is what Adriana called surrender or relinquishing power that happens, and it does as part of this shift. Not as a technique, it's just, again, aligning with the truth of things. We don't have the power. It's obvious if you look. What's part of that is that burden gets taken off your back. That pressure gets taken off. All that responsibility, I got to figure it all out. I got to get it all done. I got to do all of the steps, and I got to keep, everything gets so much easier when that happens, even though the mind rebels against it. All right. All right. Dara says, I feel pissed off and exhausted. I've been here before. It all fails. But unlike you, Robert, the next stage never happens for me. It's all just shit. I've stopped trying too. Okay. Now, Dara, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. If you haven't watched the previous episodes about mission, purpose, journey, stories, a story that unfolds over our whole lives, watch those previous episodes. I could have said the same thing. And I could have said, hasn't happened for me. It appears to happen for so-and-so who's written a book or is on the lecture circuit or whatever else, These 4 steps, and for a lot of people, it's hitting the end of their rope. It's hitting this point, like I talked about, of just, okay, fine. Not just in a frustrated moment of, fuck this, I give up, I'm sick of trying, That's not really what happened to me. It was a very different kind of a thing. It was just, okay, I've given all that I can give. I got nothing else. Let's wait and see what happens next. That's the kind of thing that happened. And it was a peaceful kind of a, lack of a better term. Hasn't happened yet. Didn't happen to me, this final journey, This shift did not happen to me until I was in my early 50s. That doesn't mean anything, and it's not a rule or a formula. It could have happened when I was 60. It could have happened when I was 80. It could have happened when I was 40. Doesn't make any difference. But it's becoming a higher priority. It's becoming more of a must, and I totally get that kind of frustration. It's what happens a lot before the big breakthroughs happen. And in many cases, it's what has to happen to shatter all of the lies, illusions, and stories and bullshit that's taught out there about how you get what you want in life and how it really works and where the power is and all that kind of stuff. In general, there has to be these very difficult, traumatic, opposite to what you think it is experiences that happen over and over, which is what happened to me with this teacher added in, this inner teacher, that ultimately leads to these breakthroughs. Because if you know what I talk about with cloud cover, there's layer after layer after layer after layer after layer of lies, illusions, and stories that we grow up with being built into what I call our mind machine. And although who we really are could snap its finger and wipe it all out in an instant, as I mentioned in previous episodes, that's not how it tends to work. It happens as a journey. Little bit of change, little bit of change, little bit of change, slow but sure transformation. There's a lot more I can say about that. Maybe I will in a future show. So I get it. And because it hasn't happened to you and because so many experiences have been shit, which is the same thing that happened to me, doesn't mean that it's never going to, or that there isn't an answer, or that everything that you hear is just going to be more shit. But, you know, we'll turn the page in your story and see where it goes. Let me take a look here. This is from the website. Let me see. There's a lot that's come through here. Alan says, what about the technique of prayer to connect to this vast creative essence for a particular desire? Again, to me, anything that you or me or anybody else watching this tries to do to make something happen isn't going to make it happen. And if it appears to, let me explain what I mean. It still isn't because you did it or you made it happen. It's because who you really are made it happen. And part of the story was that you prayed or whatever. I mean, let me give you an example. Imagine that you're reading a book. As you probably know, I like using the example of Harry Potter. Imagine that you're reading a book. And I don't know why I always seem to use the example of page 263. I don't know where that comes from, but imagine that on page 263, you read in this novel, could be a movie or a TV show, you read that Harry prays to connect to this vast consciousness. So here's my first question. If you're reading that in a book, a character in a book, in a novel, in a story, prays and asks for something, are they really praying? Are they really asking for something? Yes or no? Well, to me, the answer is no. The author wrote a story in which a character prays and asks for something, right? That's the truth. So you keep reading, and the prayer goes unanswered. It doesn't happen. Did the character fail? Did the character pray wrong? What happened there? Well, what happened there is an author wrote a story in which a character prayed and in which the prayer was not answered. Let's imagine that the prayer took place on page 263. You keep reading, and on page 310, the prayer is answered. Did the prayer do it? Yes or no? Did the character in this fictional story do it? Yes or no? The answer is no. The author wrote that the character would pray, and the author wrote that the prayer would be answered. And it's a story that's unfolding, that you're reading and you're aware of. And my bias is, and I get that the mind can be confused by this, not like it. It's the same thing with our lives. So if praying happens, you know, I talked about 2 examples where I went outside. I don't call it praying, but somebody could. The 2 times that I explained, and there are plenty of other times where I begged for something to what I now call true creative essence, you know, but it didn't have any power. It didn't mean anything. My requests weren't granted. My prayers weren't answered. The praying and the experience of the praying and the asking was part of the story. It was a unique experience, as I talked about in previous episodes. And then what happened because of my journey and what was unfolding as written, so to speak, by who we really are, true creative essence. But any time that we think we're doing it, we're not. Anytime something happens that we call good or bad, or there appears to be cause and effect, I did this and then this happened, it's an illusion. It's always just like in a novel, in the examples I just gave, in a movie, it seems like there's cause and effect, but there isn't. Who we really are is always the cause. What we see is always the effect. That was in here too, worded in a different way. All right. Liz says, is taking the steps already decided? Is it a matter of being conscious of an alignment with our higher self? Taking the step, everything's already decided. I mean, again, this really gets simple. And the best metaphor, until you experience this yourself, which you can, is that example I gave of a novel. Anything that happens in a novel that you're reading, anything that happens in a movie you're watching, in a TV show, episode, series that you're watching, it's all been planned in advance. It's all been written in advance. And you become aware of it a little at a time as you turn the page or you watch the thing unfold. But it's all been planned in advance, written in advance by a writer. And my bias and my experience and where I was taken after this shift took place was knowing and seeing and experiencing in ways that I can't explain in words that it's the exact same thing with us, and that it's not bad news. It's the best news ever, because it's what opens the door to this radically different experience that I call ultimate freedom, which is the truth anyway. And again, I talked about this before. This is a great saying. It also was spoken by an angel in the City of Angels movie. Some things are true whether you believe in them or not. The truth is the truth. It doesn't matter what the mind or the mind machine thinks about it or what we think about it. The truth is the truth. And what I've been narrating here to me is the truth. So is it a matter of being conscious of an alignment with a higher self? Not really, especially if that's in the sense of something that you need to do. Because again, how can you align yourself with your higher self? How could you do it? What would you do? Now, there's lots of stories about what you can do, you know. There's breathing techniques, and there's meditation techniques, and there's visualization techniques, and there's all these kinds of things, but it almost never works for anybody if you look at what goes on out there. But how would you do it? And what does alignment even really mean anyway? If right now you were aligned with your higher self, what would that actually look like in a practical sense in your day-to-day life? It probably would look like, in my language, something appearing in inner space, which you have absolutely no control over. But, you know, again, it is drilled into us as children. If we study personal development, if we study spiritual development, if we study manifestation, attraction, reality creation techniques, how to get what you want, goal setting, whatever, it's drilled into us. You're in charge, you're in charge, you're in charge. You can make it happen, you can make it happen, you do it. It's your responsibility. It is so deeply ingrained in us, and it just isn't true, which you can see and verify for yourself if you look with clear vision. But it's so deeply embedded in all of us. And it's something that goes away as this shift takes place and the experience of truth, I call it, awakens in you, because it's the best way that I can describe it. I guess knowing about you and going through all these teachings with you has been predetermined, but to what end? Joy asks. I talked about this in previous episodes, so if you haven't watched all of the episodes, especially the last 3, I would invite you to watch them, and if you've watched them, I would invite you to watch them again. The answer is, let me ask you a question in response. Have you ever watched a movie or read a novel or seen a TV show where a character had a mentor? Had a teacher, spiritual teacher, whatever, coach, whatever. Have you ever seen a movie, read a novel, or watched a TV show where a character had some sort of a mentor, teacher, helper, coach? Yes or no? All of you watching, put a Y in the chat box or comments if you've seen a movie, read a novel, watched a TV show where a character had a mentor, whatever. Odds are the answer is yes for all of you. So if I were to say to you, Joy, why? Why was there a mentor or teacher in that story? To what end? What's the point? Well, the point is, to what end is, this whole human experience is about having unique experiences. Unique experiences that we cannot have as infinite beings, spiritual beings in our natural state, however you want to language it. And so every little detail that's different, there's a mentor, there's not. There's a mentor that says this. There's a mentor that says that. It works, it doesn't work. All of this is what I call raw material and building blocks for great stories, for great human experiences, regardless of our mind machine opinions about it. So, your specific question, if somebody comes into my sphere of influence and becomes aware of the things that I say, in a little way or a big way, it's somehow contributing to their story. It's raw material, it's building blocks. I talked about last week, you never quite know where anything's going to lead. So even if somebody has been in my sphere of influence and has been aware of things that I've shared for a really long time, who knows where it's going to lead and who knows when and what it's going to look like and what the breakthroughs are, but to what end it contributes, just like in anybody that you see in a movie. Even if there's a scene where the heroes, the stars, are in a restaurant and there's a whole bunch of people in the background, anything that you see in a movie, anything you see in a novel, anything you see in a TV show, it's there because somehow it's contributing to the story, or it wouldn't be there. And it's the same thing with us. Somehow contributes. Alan says, is it a matter of just accepting? No, because you can't. You already know this. How can you accept or reject something? What are you going to do in a practical way? Now, this can fry the brain, so to speak, fry the mind until you actually experience the truth of it. It goes back to what I said before, Alan. Accepting can happen. What those words are trying to describe can happen, and we're going late, but I'm just going to go late today. It can happen, but you can't do it. You can't choose it. You can't make it happen. And I'll just say, and odds are your mind will go blank. Maybe something will pop. Odds are you, Alan, and other people listening, you've been trying to accept stuff for a long time, and it hasn't happened. You've been trying to surrender, relinquish control, stop this thought from happening, stop these feelings from happening, and it hasn't happened. So what you're calling accepting it can happen and does happen, what you're pointing to with that word on this shift. But I couldn't do it, and my bias is nobody can do it. No human, no individual, no what I call character in the story can do it. Can Harry Potter accept anything in the books himself? Pause for dramatic effect. The answer is no. Harry Potter can appear to accept something. Accepting can happen if the author writes it, but Harry can't do it. It's the same thing with us. So what you and a bunch of other people, and again, same kind of thing happened to me, except on my journey it was tried to accept, couldn't. Tried to surrender, couldn't. Tried to this, couldn't. Tried to that, couldn't. Finally realized, although you all probably know, there's a lot of stuff out there that if someone says, well, you need to surrender, you need to just accept, you need to just stop judging, you need to whatever, and you say, well, I've tried, I can't, they'll dump a lot of stuff on you about, well, you did it wrong. Or you've got some limiting subconscious belief or karma or past lives or whatever it is. Somehow you're at fault. You know, I went through all of that kind of stuff too. But ultimately on this journey, helped by this inner teacher, I got to the point of realizing I got no control over any of this, like Meg Ryan talked about in that clip. And if you came on late, watch the replay. There's a clip I played at the beginning of this show. So again, long-winded answer. Acceptance can happen. But Alan can't accept it or not accept it. It can happen or not happen. It does happen when this shift takes place because who you really are metaphorically writes for it to happen. A lot of these kinds of things happened in what I call the Robert story, but I didn't do it. And I'm crystal clear on that. And the journey of all of this and seeing the changes and seeing that it isn't me and being able to experience it all in a radically different way is the most delicious, amazing, extraordinary thing I've ever been through. And to me, the most delicious, extraordinary thing that I've ever guided other people on. It's mind-blowing and extraordinary, this journey, but it really messes with your head. It's very, very difficult to deal with at an idea concept level with layer after layer after layer after layer of lies, illusions, and stories and cloud cover in place. Liz says that I would stop feeling tortured by the script if I was aligned and accepting the story. Again, not in the way that you're languaging that, Liz, no. But in your language, to stop feeling tortured, which is what happened with me, can happen. What you're calling aligned and accepting can happen, but it isn't something that Liz does or that Liz needs to do or that Liz is an idiot or stupid or whatever because she hasn't found a way to do yet, or has karma or subconscious, whatever. Again, very difficult for the mind to deal with this. I get that. I've been there, done that on steroids. But when the shift takes place, which includes the kinds of things that people are bringing here, surrender, relinquishing control, aligning, accepting, all of that happens. But it isn't something that you do with a technique, with choice, with intention, with physically, mentally, or emotionally doing something, but it's something that can happen and does happen on the journey. All right, let's see. Getting a lot of yeses about the question that I asked. So we can't force life. We need to just show up without expectations. Again, in there, no disrespect intended, is lies, illusions, and stories and mind noise. It is true that you can't force life, but you don't need me to tell you that. Everybody watching this, you already know that from your experience. And there may still be some belief or fantasy or whatever active, that it could change someday or you really do create your own reality or whatever, but everybody knows that you can't force life. I mean, I don't think there's anybody, unless they're high or they're in massive denial, that would say, I can, force life to do whatever I want. 100%. Nobody ever says that. We all know that you can't force life to do anything. We all know on some deep, profound, primal level that the truth is, which I mentioned in previous episodes, you wake up in the morning and stuff happens all day long. You have no control over any of it is the truth. I know it seems different to many people. And then you go to sleep. And then you wake up the next day and stuff happens all day long that you have no control over. And then you go to sleep. Life does what it does, I mean, that's what you see if you look with clear vision. So if you just show up without expectations, well, no disrespect intended. I'm just being a little dramatic with that. Good luck with that. There's millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people out there that are trying to do that now. To just show up with no expectations. Just let go of this, let go of that. Just show up and see whatever happens. And failing miserably. I tried to do that. Odds are, since you're bringing that up, but it's not a to-do list item. I'm not here saying to you, there isn't a name here. It's guest 2282. So guest 2282, I'm not saying to you, hey, align with the truth. Align with who you really are. Let go of your expectations and just show up, and whatever the hell happens, happens, and just enjoy it. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not giving you a technique to do that. I've been saying over and over and over, you can't. There is no technique that can create that outcome. What I am saying is that outcome, what you're describing that way, can happen. And it happens on this journey. And it happens when this shift takes place because who you really are makes the shift, not because you do somehow. That's what I keep kind of hammering over and over and over. So there's so many of these things that are out there in the teachings are true if you elevate them up to who you really are, what I now call true creative essence. I used to call consciousness expanded self. You probably have your own word for it. So much of it's true if you elevate it up to there and you put the power in who you really are, but not true if you put it here. And again, you don't need me to tell you this. There's overwhelming evidence in your own experience and in the experience of everybody else that just isn't the way it works. You can't just choose to align or to relinquish or to surrender or to accept. It happens or it doesn't. And then you're aware of whether it happens or it doesn't. But on this journey that I'm talking about, on the journey that I guide people on, which is my life's work and that I was guided on, these things happen as a natural byproduct, but not because I did it or because I can show you how to do it. It happens in the ways that I've talked about. And a lot of you might want to rewatch this episode because there's a lot here. And you might want to rewatch it multiple times to get all the layers and levels of what I've been sharing here. Liz says, will the mind stop when it becomes convinced that it cannot do anything? Is that stopping the shift? There isn't any one way that any of this looks, Liz, and it can come and go and it can be different in different stories. But if you look at what happens in your mind, like it's a screen, TV, movie screen, or whatever, if historically there's all kinds of stuff on that screen, it's very congested. In my language, what's going on in inner space for you is very congested with difficult to deal with things, stressful things appearing. That changes. And as I mentioned in a previous episode, it changes in one of two ways. It changes because all the stuff that's appearing vanishes. And by the way, it doesn't usually vanish, boom. It's usually less gone with other things happening that I talk about in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. But it can vanish. Or it can still appear for a little while exactly the way it did or a little bit less or whatever, but the way that it's experienced is so radically different that it's no longer a problem and there's no longer, hey, would you shut up? Leave me alone, mind, Fuck you, I'm sick of hearing the same thing over and over and over, all that kind of stuff and the pain and get me out of here and I hate this and all. So again, on this path, and in my case, most of this, I call it mind noise, mind congestion, vanished. Again, not like that, but less gone over a period of time. And that happens a lot. And for some people, as a blip, as a temporary thing, or even as a longer term thing, some of these things to one degree or another, usually less, can appear, but they're not a problem. But that's a talk for another day. It's much more complicated than what I just said. All right, let me take one last look because we're way over, so... All right, I still got a ton of questions. It would probably take me hours, which is interesting because here's the deal. Next week, I'm going to shift gears. And the show next week, the title is going to be Ask Me Anything. So for the whole show, I'm just going to respond to questions. I'm not going to lecture. I'm not going to teach. I'm not going to share. The whole show is just going to be about answering questions, and I'll be prepared to go longer than the normal hour if that's what's required. So if you got a question out there that you have that I haven't answered today, and you still have it next week, which you may not, make a note, whatever, bring it next week, but it's time for the show to end, and I've gone way over, so cool, and I'd love to be able to address all these other questions, but from what I'm seeing, it would probably take me another hour or more, and that's just not the way that this works. But there's next week, and again, the title is going to be Ask Me Anything. So I have a quick message for you, going along the lines of what I've said, to give you one last what I call truth virus injection, an invitation to join me in this Ultimate Freedom Experience, and then we'll close the show for this week. Thank you very much for joining me again. I hope you'll join me next week and continue to join me again. Next week will all be questions and answers. So here is my short message, and then we'll have our close to end the show. If you missed some or all of this, one way or another, you'll be able to get access to a replay. And again, I strongly suggest that you watch this particular episode multiple times and let the drops come into your pond over and over and over and continue to ripple out, because there's a lot of really important stuff here that can trigger a lot of resistance in the mind. So here's the quick message, and then we'll do our close, and I hope to see you next week or connect with you in some other way. During the episodes of this show, I talk a lot about an inner shift that must take place before things will truly and permanently change in your life. That inner shift I speak about absolutely can happen for you, but you cannot think your way there, technique your way there, or create, manifest, or attract it. It has to happen in a different way. I can help you experience that shift, and the best way that I know to do it is through what I call the ultimate freedom experience that I offer live and online. To get all the details, visit my website, robertscheinfeld.com, and take the first step down that road, which is to download and read the guide that I created called Living the Unblocked Life. Uncover and dissolve what secretly blocks you most. It's free, it's a quick read at just 11 pages, and it will start the ball rolling for you. Get your copy at robertscheinfeld.com. For more information on how I can help you unblock yourself and experience ultimate freedom, visit my website, robertscheinfeld.com, and while you're there, get the guide. The guide will open a gateway into a free video masterclass that gives you all the details.